All praise, all glory, all honors most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I want to say peace to you in the name of the Son. I count it always a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to preach the word. And never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, in today's message, I want to deal with the enduring message of his instruction, the enduring Torah. The Torah has been here. You know, when we think of Torah, when we think of the law, obviously the lively oracles were delivered to the children of Israel on Mount Sinai. We understand this without question. That's why it tells us, only you have I known of all the nations of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquity. What advantage us that the Jew, what profit is there? Circumcision must chiefly in every way, for unto them will commend the oracles of God. Right? We know this. But what we should also understand is that there has always been law. And when you understand that there has always been law, it becomes clear that you would never do away with his law as Christians teach today. So let's pick it up real quick. Let's go to Matthew, right? Matthew. So that's why it's important to understand this. Matthew, let's pick it up in Matthew, the 5th chapter, Matthew 5. And see what the Messiah said in verse 17. He said, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Right? Then he says, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. That doesn't mean you're going to get it. That means you're going to be cast into the lake of fire. That doesn't mean you're going to inherit it and you're going to get a good reward. He said, but whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. It is not in the future that the law is done away with. It is not now that the law is done away with. How do we know it's not now that the law is done away with? Let's go to the book of Romans. Because we are living in that age. We are in the last days. We're living in the time after Christ came. The whole book is telling you about this one to come. And then he came, right? So now this is let's pick it up in Romans, the 6th chapter. So now we have grace, right? We have the unmerited favor that comes from our Messiah. So does that mean now when he was here, he said the law wasn't done away with. Now after he's died and been resurrected and sitting on the right hand of the Father, and then we have grace, the sacrifice has been made for our sins. Does that mean we could do away with his law now? This is Romans 6:1. It said, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Right? We got grace now. We don't have to keep the law, as so many of these trifling ministers teach. It says, God forbid, how shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? The message has not changed. And that has been the message even from the very beginning. Because when you go back to Genesis, and that's what we'll stay in Genesis for the most part. Genesis, understand that there was instruction given, there was commandment, even a mitzvah given in the beginning. What was that? In Genesis 2:15, it says, and the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And so he had purpose. And then what he had mitzvah or commandment. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. And death came into the world because of sin. We have been dying ever since. If you listen to this any amount of time, we understand that Adam did die in that very day. He lived to be 930 years. A day to the Lord is 1,000 years. Methuselah, 969 years. Longest living man on record. He died within that day to the Lord. The day to the Lord, again, is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. So man sinned. So now let's look at and I want us to pay attention here in Genesis, the 6th chapter, because here, prior to the flood, we're going to see he cuts man's lifespan down. Okay. And he makes a proclamation. He declares that he's going to cut his lifespan down. Okay. And now, but notice what it said here. This is in Genesis, the 6th chapter. And it said, well, in verse 3, it said, the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So he cut his lifespan down, and then comes the flood. But why is the flood coming? See, people are not really paying attention. That's why they could come up with these false notions or this false doctrine, really, that the law is no more. You don't have to keep the law. You breaking the law is the reason Jesus had to die. When we call Jesus in English, the reason he had to die in the first place, because man sinned. And the wages of sin, as Paul tells us, is death. But now in Genesis 6 and 5, what does it say? It says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was evil, only evil continually. Wait a minute. What wickedness? If there was no law, there's no standard by which to judge what wickedness is. There's no way to judge iniquity. There's no way to judge sin if there is no law. But there was. There always has been. See, that's what when you had the creation of Adam, that's why he immediately gave him commandment once he brought him into his conscience. After he brought forth the creation, and he made man, and as a sovereign, he gives him instruction. And that has been manifested in one way or another to man. Man knows what he's supposed to do, even having a conscience within himself. But then there's a specific manifestation that takes place. Okay? So now, again, he said, God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Then it said, and he repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth and agreed to him at his heart. And so then he says he's going to bring about judgment on this earth. Again, how are you going to bring about judgment if you've given man no standard by which to live? And really, quite frankly, the creation declares the glory, the heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament shows his handiwork. It tells you that in Psalms 19. And the creation itself shows you that he exists. Therefore, our duty is to find out what he requires of us. And that's why it goes on to tell you in Psalms, the 19th chapter, that the law is perfect, converting the soul. Okay, but now it says, and the Lord said in verse 7, and the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. All right. So we should understand that what man has gone astray. That's what when he looked down, then he saw how man had went astray, and he flooded the earth. Think about what's going on right now. That's why when you read in Luke around the 17th chapter, he talks about how when the day that the Lord or the Son of Man is revealed, and all of the judgment that's going to be poured upon this earth, it's going he eludes you or takes you back to the flood, the days of Noah. He takes you back even to the days of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. But now let's pick it up at Genesis, the 7th chapter, because what happens after the flood? He brings the flood, and only Noah and his wife and his sons, 3 sons and their wives are saved. The earth is flooded. And for those who, there was no planetary flood, it's no coincidence that is an archetype that you find throughout many cultures, that there was a planetary flood. Why? Because that was in the collective memory of man. But now let's pick it up in Genesis 7 and 1. It says, and the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Wait a minute. How can you be righteous unless there's a standard of morality, a standard of righteousness? This is why Noah found grace, it tells you, in the first place. He was a righteous man. So let's pick it up. I'm going to go just to prove that. Genesis 6 and verse 8, it said, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. How can you be just? How can you be perfect if there's no standard of justice? If there's no standard of righteousness? If there's no standard of perfection? Right? The standard is the law, always has been. Right? That's how somebody can be perfect. It is by their adherence to the perfect law. And just to read that to you, this is Psalms 19 and verse 7. It says, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right or righteous, and rejoice in the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. Now, in Genesis 7:1, they said, come into the ark, and then it says something. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. So you had a distinction between clean and unclean. In other words, animals that were considered good for sacrifice and consumption, that would be clean, and then those unclean, that were not fit for consumption or for sacrifice. For example, swine is not something that you can sacrifice. Why? Because it is unclean. Leviticus the 11th chapter. So now this is before Sinai. See, what I'm about to read now is, what was given on Sinai about the law of clean and unclean, but that had already been manifested. That had already been shown. It is just that it's been given to Israel directly. But now this is Leviticus, the 11th chapter in verse 1, and says, and the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, these are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever part of the hoof and is cloven footed and two of the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew of the cud, or of them that divide the hoof. Okay, so the ones that part of the hoof and are cloven footed and chew of the cud, those are clean. Right? You can, like a cow, you can consume beef. But he says, but there are some that don't meet that criteria. He says, nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. But unclean, and to what was clean and what was unclean was already shown. You see that before Sinai. So he said, and the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, that's a rabbit, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And then he goes on to verse 7, and the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. That's the garbage disposal on a farm. He's telling you, you're not supposed to eat that. But that was shown. So now what was clean and unclean was shown already. Noah knew that. See, again, Noah not only was righteous, and it was shown unto him what he should do. The Bible says that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. But how could you possibly know what righteousness is before Sinai? Well, because it was already shown unto man. Even his name that they would call on in the days of Moses, that was shown unto man. You see that in the days of Enos, that they were calling on the name of Yahuwah, Yahweh. Or some say Yahweh. But now let's pick it up at Genesis, the 38th chapter. Genesis, the 38th chapter. Genesis 38, because again, this law, the Torah was already there before Sinai. Genesis, actually, let's pick it up at, let's go back a bit. Let's go to Genesis 18. Genesis 18. Because I want us to read, when he called this man who was our example, the father of faith, he's called often Abraham. Notice what it says about Abraham. This is Genesis 18 and 17. So he was promised a son. And just notice, prior to this passage, he says that I'm going to read about his behavior. It says, and the man rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And then he interceded on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you find this many righteous, well, you again, how could you be righteous if there's no standard of righteousness? Your righteousness or sin or what's not sin is not based on your belief at a particular time, as you act in some form of moral relativism. It is not an opinion. The law is eternal. It is there, and it always is. It always is the standard. So now it says in verse 17. This is Genesis 18 and 17. It says, And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. Okay, so now he said, I'm gonna do this for him. I know he's righteous. The only thing he says, I hide it from him because it's certainly gonna happen. But now notice what it says in the next verse. It says in verse 20, and the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. Wait a minute, what is sin? 1 John 3 and 4. Whosoever sinneth transgresses the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. What were they doing in Sodom and Gomorrah? They were dealing in homosexuality. That's why so that was sin. They wanted to know the angels. They thought with men, they wanted to know the angels in a biblical way. That is sin. And that was shown, even then they knew that. I'm gonna read this here. Now, this is what the law says about what they were doing. In Leviticus 18 and verse 22, it says, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. How could he rain down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah if there was no law? If there was no standard of morality? No, they had to be a standard of morality. Let's pick it up at, we're still in Genesis, and we still want to deal with Abraham. This is Genesis 26. Now, Abraham, these are his descendants here, because he was promised that they would thrive. This is Genesis 26 and verse 1. It says, and there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. Right? And then it says, matter of fact, even when you see a case where a man took his wife because he thought it was his sister, in a sense it was, but he thought, well, he was gonna take her, and he said, hey, why have you done this to me? In the sense of, you said this, you trying to bring this this sin upon us. Okay, see, they knew what right and wrong was. All right, this is Genesis 20, and it says, let's pick it up. And one, it says, Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, thou art but a dead man for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. Okay. So Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Again, you had a standard of morality. Okay. Then it goes on to say, and God said unto him in a dream, yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from what? Sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Okay. So now that's an example. So again, how is that a sin? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Let's pick it up at Genesis 26. It says, he told him to sojourn in this land, talking about Isaac. So now it's still talking about, it says, and there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham, and Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. So this is around this same place. Okay, and then it says, and the Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee, for unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And he's going to tell you why. In verse 6, it says, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. This is before Sinai. This is before Sinai. Let's pick it up. So now that was with Isaac. Let's see something with Jake during the days of Jacob, because he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But now let's see one of his sons, that fourth son, Judah, and let's see what it says here concerning him. This is Genesis 38, and I'm gonna pick it up at verse 6. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's, that's a side note too, men would find wives for even their sons. But then it said, Judah's firstborn was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. Wait a minute, he killed him because he was what? Because he was wicked. He was sinful. And Judah said unto Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her and raise up seed to thy brother. Wait a minute. Take your wife. This is a liberate law. This is a duty of brothers. Deuteronomy, the 25th chapter. See, so they were doing things that you find officially, when it was officially given, if you will, in the day to the children of Israel, they received the law, but they had the law back here. And this is an example. We just read an example after example. Deuteronomy 25 and verse 5. It said, brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child. The wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger, meaning of some other people. It said, her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to him to wife and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. So he was supposed to do what? He was supposed to fulfill the duty of brothers. Let's go back to Genesis and let's see the blessing that he gave. I want to point out something here in Genesis, the 49th chapter, concerning one of his sons, Reuben. Now, this is verse 1. It says, because you'll see elements of the law, right? And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together. I'm in verse 1, Genesis 49 and 1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Yisrael your father. Again, Yisrael is the name that was given unto Jacob. Now he's going to start with his firstborn son, which is Reuben. Or Reuben, that's what somebody say. It said, and Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. So it's his firstborn son, but notice what the firstborn son did. He said in verse 4, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. What is he talking about? What he's talking about is how he lay with one of his concubines, one of his wives. Genesis, the 35th chapter. Genesis 35 and verse 22 says, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that the law tells you not to do that. Okay? The law clearly tells you not to, let's go to Leviticus. The law clearly tells you that you're not supposed to do that. So that's why he was he lost the inheritance of the firstborn son. Okay. Let's pick it up at we're in Leviticus, the 18th chapter. And I'm going to read it here. In verse 8, it says, Leviticus 18 and 8 says, the nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. Okay? So you're not supposed to do that. And that's even, you can go all the way. So that was before the law was officially given. We saw when it was given, right? We clearly see what Jesus said. You shouldn't even lust after a woman in your heart. You're not supposed to commit adultery. That includes your father's wife. And then after he came, you see this in 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, where he says in verse 1, it is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his what? father's wife. So that's the same thing Reubin did. And so he's saying that's not what you should do. See, the law, he didn't tell you the law is not away with. Man, the law has always been here. The law has always been here. And this is something we need to consider, because if you understand that the law is always been, and you understand that they broke it, which is why Israel was cast into slavery, why all this turmoil came up, for not just for the people, but even from man's inception. When he sinned, we've been dying ever since. We should understand that's why Jesus had to die for the sins of the world. We would understand that no time are we to do away with his law, and also that there are consequences for doing so. This is Psalm 119 and verse 126. It says, it is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. What is he going to do? This is the last place, Isaiah. So we can look in the past and see what he's going to do in the future. He doesn't change. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I'm Lord, I change not. This is before you sons of Jacob are not consumed. This is Isaiah, the 24th chapter. Notice what it said here. It says, the earth, I'm in verse 5. The earth is, I'm going to pick it up at verse 1. It said, behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. Then he tells you something in verse 5. In verse 4, he said, the earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. So all the sin that you see right now, you shouldn't think that there's not going to be judgment. He put the rainbow out there showing you that no other time when he flooded the earth, he didn't say anything about fire. Let's keep reading. He said, therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. That's what's coming up on this earth. So that's just something to put something on your mind, that the Torah was before Sinai. And if you understand that, you understand that it has always been, and that we're supposed to be keeping his law. That's even our whole duty. As he said, let us say the conclusion of the whole matter, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man, for God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you were edified.